So good evening. Tonight we have a slightly different format, so you won't be seeing me tonight, but I will show you some pictures. And we're going to jump to the 8th chapter of the book, which is titled Von den Braten. That means from the roast or roasts. And the first thing is he has an introduction here, number 1. In this page, let me see that I get them over here. Then number 2. And then we're actually starting with the recipes here, I think. Yeah, von den Braten. Exactly it. And he also talks about the fire you actually need. So this is the introduction where he explains, or Hauptner explains to us, what the stoves look like it and how you should situate this in the kitchen. Now again, this book was written in 1838. And he gives us the varieties and why you should use this oven versus the other one or stove rather than this one. And I'll get into this in a second. Now, when we get into the recipes, which we won't, we will just be talking about stoves and fireplaces tonight, is one of the things he does is they're basting the roasts, whatever it is, with butter, with a lot of butter. And that is one of the main parts which I'm going to show later on, but I just wanted to show you this up front. This is the butter I actually use. This is the Plugra. Let me see if I can zoom in or zoom out here. Plugra unsalted butter. If I go further back here, maybe I need more light. Anyway, unsalted butter, and we can read here it has 82% butter fat. And when we look here on the side, it will tell us it is cream. And what did they say on here? Cream, flavoring, and contains milk. Now, this is the thing, is because he talks about, in the book, about using good butter versus bad butter. And with 82% fat, we're basically looking what he probably would have considered a bad butter, but this is pretty good by today's standards. Now, what makes this a not so good butter is that to get to 100% of what this thing is 1 pound, US pound, 224 grams, so a little bit smaller than a quarter pound in Germany or in Europe, the metric pound. Is the question is, what are the 18%? We know that the butter fat is the cream and that is the milk. And that means we got 18% in there, which is most likely not going to be flavor, but that is called water, H2O. And this is where we are with the industrial food processing today, is that they're basically putting in water to stretch everything to the absolute maximum. And that's why we have to clarify butter. I use this here because I found this economically and from availability the best butter you can purchase. I get this at Walmart, and that quarter pound here is approximately, it's 8 ounces, so it's a half a pound actually of butter. Yeah, 8 ounces, 224 grams, 1 pound, half a pound. Yeah, a half a pound of butter is $3.18. I think I paid for this here. And there's only one more expensive version available, which is most common here in the dairy section, and that is the Irish cream butter, which is the same unsalted and has the same 82% butter fat in it. And this tastes pretty creamy, but like I said, we're dealing with 18% water, and that's why we have to clarify the butter, meaning we have to remove the water usually to use it as a fat in a frying pan if you want to go to medium-high heat. This butter here, as I'm holding it with the 18% water in it, works well if you start out at a low temperature where it kind of foams, low to medium heat, and then you burn off slowly but surely the water before you actually cook with it. And this way you get the whole thing to use it, and the butter will not burn if you don't go much higher than 250 or 275 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what I can tell you. Otherwise, you have to clarify this. What that means is if I have a half a pound of butter and you get 8 ounces and you take 20% roughly away, that is 1.6 ounces. So we're going to wind up with 6.5 ounces of clarified butter. The rest of it went up in steam. That's just something I wanted to let you know. But this is what he talks about it. Good butter, unsalted butter, creamy butter with a very high fat content. That's what they use to baste. And this will work with 18%, but it is not as good as what he had back then. Now, this is a stove, as you can see it, in an open fireplace. And we will get back to this picture in a minute. But first, I wanted to show you on what I found here on the internet. I got this from a stove manufacturer's website. They had that from a museum. And you can see this is, of course, the beginning of humanity, sort of, with cooking outdoors, outside your cave with a tripod and a fire underneath. And then we migrated to these type of fireplaces where you have a spit roast here. We can see this right here. There's probably, that looks like could be a chicken, or it could be something bigger, 2 bigger beef roasts or pork or mutton, whatever they used. The fire is behind it, and above it you have the kettle to heat that stuff up. And then you have smaller cooking pots here on top of that rack system. And then they have something which might be pigeons or some birds, so that might be chickens, who knows. And you can see on the side, very dim, you see if I can zoom in, they got 2 wooden handles which you hardly can see to crank these things, to turn them over. So you had to have someone actually standing there next to it, more or less, or sitting or kneeling, turning this while this was going on. And this is the drip pan, and this is what he refers to, the drip pan. And that is essential because you have to collect all these juices from the cooking, and that will be used for the sauce later on. And that was one of the things which he said. And we're going to get to the spit roasting here in a minute. This would be then probably mid-18th century stone oven, which had already a ceramic tile, beautification in it. And that was pretty much the standard of what they used, with 1 or 2 cooking areas, a hot one and a medium high or medium low heat, so you could move this around. And then they went to the cast iron stoves. This is now a cast iron stove, and we can see this here. That's a museum piece which was set into the chimney, and we can see a pretty big crack here already, which was very common with the cast iron or iron stoves, what they called them, just iron stoves. But it was a casted iron, basically, which they put together. And you can see this here with these rivet type things, where these corners were then held together with these rounded pieces. This, he says in his book, he does not like. And this is a stovetop from around 1820 in a kitchen in a castle. So here we can see this and how this actually looked like it. And this is the type of stove which he refers to manufactured from sheet metal or just metal plates. Those were probably 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch thick steel plates, iron plates, which they used, and they would screw them and rivet them together. And he said these stoves were better in a kitchen than the cast iron ones, because the way the air is routed through this from the fire around the ovens especially. I will get to that in a minute too. And so this is his preferred oven, and he had one custom made by a blacksmith, master craftsman, for his cooking classes. Now, you have to know is the Prince Albrecht Palais was located on Wilhelmstraße, right at the T intersection where the Kochstraße Street ends into the Wilhelmstraße. And to the left, basically, when you're standing at that intersection, at that T intersection, was the Palais and the Staples. And to the right, there was then that other part of the block basically was occupied by two, I think 3 or 4 story apartment buildings. 92 and 94, I believe, was the numbers for those. And I think he lived in Wilhelmstraße 92. The Palais was Wilhelmstraße 102. And that was then the third building on that block coming from the Brandenburg Gate going towards the end of Wilhelmstraße, basically, the higher numbers. And he must have had that cooking class room in that building, probably in the basement, I would guess. And he had one of these stoves manufactured, custom-made, specifically for the classroom, for those people or those ladies who attended there, so they could see this. And I have found here this picture here of a classical setup which you would have encountered. And what is interesting is this here. We're seeing the open fireplace, and that has the shutter is closed, and we have these 2 iron holders here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit better so you can see this. And you can see this, they can be turned out, and then you can put your spit roast over here on the lower, or you can hook the spit roast into these 2 rings here. So you have 2 positions, similar to what we saw in that hand painting here, which has now disappeared, unfortunately. Let me see if I find that again. The viewers on my automotive channel, where I got about 4,000 subscribers, now we're like 105 short. They're used to this because I made a lot of the tutorials this way, and my tutorials are very popular. So here we can see this again. We have this one actually has 3 different height settings where you can actually get this. Then as higher you get it, I guess you get it more to the open flame for roasting, to make it crisp. And then on the lower one is just to cook it, basically, to get it all well done and well cooked. That is the main thing. Now, the interesting part is this here. He explains, let me just show you. I have a couple more of these stovetops. This is now a Center Island stovetop. There probably would be around 1850, 1890. And here we can see the open fireplace with 2 spit roasts on it. 2 spit roasts which are driven over a belt system. And he explains in his book that the French kitchens were so sophisticated that they had a fan blade inside the chimney here, up here, which would drive a mechanism with these belts. So these spit roasts would turn basically from the heat escaping out through the exhaust, through the chimney, basically. So this is how sophisticated that was. And here we can see this was the first water installations when they started to get water in there. So the water was collected in these tanks, which were mounted above. And this is an ice chest, an early ice chest, what you're seeing here. And that would go into the stove, and it would heat the water up, and they would have cold water and hot water available at the stove. So you can actually open a faucet. And I think they probably filled them up with buckets at first, and then there might have been 100 liter in the big one, maybe 200 liters, and maybe 20 or 50 liters in the smaller one. So there was enough water in there, but then they had to bring the water in before, they had the plumbing installed with steam pumps, basically steam operated pumps to pump water out of the wells, basically. Until that point, they had to pull out the buckets by hand. from the well and then feed that in here. So someone would step up on a small ladder and they would fill them up, and then that would be good for probably 2 or 3 days, depending on how much water they used. And they basically had running water, hot water and cold water in this. That's basically on how that worked. Let me see. I'm going to get the other picture here. I wanted to show you, this was this one here. Yeah, here's another kitchen. We see here too, and we can see instead of the grillette, they have the spit roast here, and they have a lever here on the side, which was basically used, and they have more levers here, which was used for the mechanisms to drive different things in here. This is how they automated their kitchen, so they didn't have to rotate them by hand. Hauptner wrote in his book, these ones were also available for open fireplaces with a weight system or with a wind-up spring like you have on the old gramophones. So you had a spring you would load up, and then this thing would undo itself, and then maybe every 10 or 15 minutes you had to rewind the spring, but you didn't have to sit next to it to do the spit roasting. That is probably the most interesting part in this. Now, this picture here will show us what the stoves actually looked like it in the oven compartments. This here is the fire, and this is the collection here of the ash. And you can see this has also a water heater already coming in here. When you had some form of that plumbing hooked up, that would be hot water available. So you would open just to spigot up the faucet and you would have hot water. One is a hot plate, one is a medium to low heat, and then you have the griddles here basically. But the main thing is, this is the roasting, what they did when you did not have a spit or an open fireplace or the attachment to the stove like you saw in the other picture instead of the griddle. So when you didn't have a rotating spit roast, they would put in this case it's probably a leg of lamb or leg of mutton or whatever it might be, or something to that extent. And they had them in here, and you can see we have 1, 2, 3 position: high heat, medium, low heat. And the hot air was circulating in here like you have today in a convection oven. And this is your saucepan, the dripping pan. They always collected the drippings of this for the sauce to make then the sauce. Basically, that was roughly on how this worked. And I'm explaining this because he incorporates all of this stuff in his cooking. So if we're going to do this later on a modern day stove, we can basically replicate this real easy. The stoves itself basically operated like I said, it's like a convection oven. And that's why he said that the stove he had made up, or he suggested the metal plate stoves were better for this because you could design the air circulating better. Let me see, is this coming here? And sometimes the computer does not want to go the way we want to go. Let me close some of these pictures out. We don't need at the moment. We don't want to look at this here. We looked at this. So they were basically all the same, essentially. Let me see if I can just go. This will not load up here for whatever reason. This is coming up in a different viewer. That's why. Let me go over here. My videos are unscripted and live, basically. So let's use this here. Whoops. We go on to the next one. This will not the way we went. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, here's another one of these videos. pictures. Here it is. Now it came up here. Let me just go back to the other video, not video, to the other picture we just had here. This is not the one we wanted. All right, let me explain this here. So this is now one of these two stove with two oven kind of things. So you have E2 and E1. This is the two fireplaces. And we can see as the heat goes through here in the middle, and then it's dispensed, it will heat up both sides, and you can make actually a fire in here for the center burner for the hot one. And that would be this one here. We go back here. This would be this picture here. Yeah. Let me close this out. Yeah, they open up in the other photo viewer. Open with here. Sorry about this. And I have been using photo gallery. I'm going to switch this over. This way we won't have that issue anymore because they open up faster. So here we can see this actually how he has explained this. The high heat oven, low heat oven. On this one here, so this had two separated. They have a bread oven here, wood coal or choke burner, and then you have an ashtray, and then you have a plate warmer actually in here, and an ashtray, and carbon charcoal pottages. So you can put charcoal in here, and then you would have high heat. So this is the ashtray, so this would be the other firing chamber. And these two chambers will heat up the entire stove system, and the air is gonna, see this, that opens up in that Microsoft stuff, in the new Microsoft stuff, and that doesn't work right. Anyway, and then the air starts to circulate, so we can see this, it comes out of here and goes around here, and then it goes back to the chimney part and goes out to the exhaust. That is basically on how this works. So you have, when you basically start cooking on the lower part, the high heat, and if you go up, it gets just warm. But it is basically, if you were cooking today with our settings, when you have the baking and roasting at the same time, boiling and roast and baking both turned on at the same time. And that was like a convection and with the circulating air around it. So that's what we're going to be doing when we're cooking to this cookbook. We're going to use the circulating air system, the convection air, in the oven, baking and boiling at the same time. In his case, with these ovens, since they didn't have a temperature dial again, is you use the low setting here, so to speak. We just see which picture was that we closed that already. Yeah, unfortunately. I did close that one. The low heat, basically, let me see if I can pull that up here again for you. Let me just see which one that was. Where you had that open. With that burner. Mornay stove. Sometimes I think I'm losing it. Huh. Well, that was our original picture here. Let me just zoom through here. Yeah, here it is, sorry. So we can see this here again as we have the dripping pan high heat, medium heat, and low heat. Lower heat, because the heat was generated down here. So, and then it circulated around this way and on this both sides until it comes back out. And this is basically why I wanted to make this video, was just to explain this, why we're going to do this, or why we're going to use the settings later on when we do roasts, according to the cookbook here. And the thing is, he was a great fan of spit roasting, but he explains in here on how we can do all of this stuff with a casserole, or with just a steel boiler kind of thing, the black ones, the oval shaped ones, fry pans, to come out to the same results, or with a roast like we saw here in this picture. So he describes all of these different alternatives to spit roasting. So we could roast it this way, we can use, or a casserole. So in the casserole, of course, it will be easier to, to collect the juices. Otherwise, we will have to put a dripping pan in. The other thing is, what he also said in here, to regulate the temperatures, they added a pot with cold water into the oven, whatever oven they were using, to regulate the heat. If it was too hot and you needed a lower heat, you would add some water in a pot basically to it. And this way we can basically cook everything he has in here under the roasts. The only thing is, what's going to be a little bit difficult to make in this here, in our regular modern day stove, will be the suckling pig. The suckling pig, the small little baby pig basically. And that would be one of the things. But goose, ducks, all the poultry stuff, and then anything else, lambs, legs of lamb, or, of mutton, or whatever we want to cook, we can actually do just with a regular stove. So all we need is just a regular oven with convection. And we're going to be in business. Of course, all of this is a lot closer to charcoal grilling, barbecuing. So if someone has like a barbecue grill with the spit roast, you probably could do then the alternative on this. But for those folks who don't have it, then we can just do the regular stuff like he described it, with a grill roast inside the oven, or in a dripping pan underneath, or we can use a casserole type thing. That is then up to us on how we want to cook this. And like I said, is the number one ingredient in all of the stuff, what he says, is the quality of the butter. And I'm not so quite sure this is a high-end butter. You can read it. They're telling us that's a premium European-style butter for $3.18 or 15 cents, whatever that was. I'm pretty sure that Hauptner would turn around in his grave if you tell him that this is a premium butter. But this is as good as it gets today for us here in our industrialized food supply chain. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and this channel will grow over time. If you like it, please like it. Leave a comment. If you got questions, please feel free to ask questions. And subscribe if you like to subscribe. And we will see you in the next video. Now, I actually said in my first video that I wanted to do the thing with the vinegars and, oils and that sort of stuff. But we're going to have to postpone this because I ordered them, but they're not here yet. So I thought I'm going to start with this, with the kitchen, the differences in the old cook stoves and how we have to transfer this kind of cooking into today's modern day kitchen. And then we will be successfully cooking this, and it will taste probably really, really good. And with that, you have a great Saturday evening.